Nós, estudantes do curso de Relações Internacionais da PUC São Paulo e integrantes do grupo de estudo sobre conflitos internacionais, em parceria com o Democracy Now!, apresentaremos as principais notícias da semana.
A partir de agora, com legendas em português, vincularemos os principais destaques internacionais.
From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
I want to tell the president to please let us out. Please release us. Give us the opportunity to stay here, to have a better future.
A message for President Trump from a little boy in an immigrant jail in Texas. He was separated from his dad at the border, then reunited and put in detention. Last week, armed guards forcibly re-separated them, taking away his dad and more than a dozen others who non-violently demanded they all be released. But first, to California, where ICE agents arrested an immigrant husband driving his pregnant wife to the hospital to give birth. The mother then drove herself to the hospital where she gave birth to their son alone. We'll speak to her lawyer. Then we remember lifelong pacifist David McReynolds.
To be a war resister means to challenge the institution of war and to resist all wars, defensive or aggressive, even at the cost of going to prison or at the risk of your life.
For nearly 4 decades, David McReynolds was a longtime member of the War Resisters League. In 1980 and 2000, he ran for president as an openly gay man on the Socialist Party ticket.
Look, the presidential election is a referendum on ideas. That's really all it is. So I'm trying to present the concept of socialism, put it back in the American dialogue. I think it has a right to be in. I'm tired of hearing we're anti-imperialist, anti-racist, and so on, and not know what we're for. And I am for democratic socialism.
We'll speak with David McReynolds' longtime friends, Ed Hedeman, and investigative journalist Jeremy Scahill. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. CNN has confirmed the bomb that killed 40 children when it struck their school bus in Yemen's northern city of Sada was made by the U.S. weapons manufacturer Lockheed Martin and sold by the United States to Saudi Arabia. The August 9th airstrike has sparked widespread outrage and increased scrutiny about the U.S. role in the Saudi-led war in Yemen. The bomb, a laser-guided Mk-82, is similar to other U.S.-manufactured bombs that struck a Yemeni market, killing 97 people, and a funeral home in Sana'a, killing 155 people in 2016. Following the funeral home massacre, the Obama administration banned the sale of precision-guided military technology to Saudi Arabia. The Trump administration overturned the ban last year. To see our full coverage of the April 9th bombing of the school bus in Yemen, which killed 51 people overall, 40 of them school children, go to democracynow.org. In San Bernardino, California, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents arrested a man driving his pregnant wife to the hospital to give birth last Wednesday, sparking widespread outrage. The ICE agents detained Joel Arona Lara when he stopped at a gas station, forcing his wife, Maria del Carmen Venegas, to drive herself to the hospital for her scheduled C-section. The couple has lived in the United States for more than 10 years and have 5 children, including the newborn baby. We'll have more on the story after headlines. In more immigration news, in Texas, armed guards forcibly removed 16 fathers from the Karnes County Detention Center, where they were being held with their sons after the families were separated at the border, then reunited. Authorities appear to have re-separated the parents and sons as retaliation for their plans to organize a nonviolent protest. Many of the imprisoned fathers said they'd been tricked into signing deportation agreements in English that ICE told them were reunification papers. The families have now been reunited and some have been released. We'll have more on the story later in the broadcast. Former CIA Director John Brennan says he may pursue legal action against President Trump after Trump stripped Brennan of his security clearances last week. This is Brennan speaking Sunday.
And so I think this is yet another example of his egregious abuse of power and authority. Just because he has the ability to revoke one's clearance doesn't mean that he is doing it for the appropriate reasons. Indeed, he violated the process that he himself, his administration, put out last year in terms of the basis for revoking security clearances. So I think it was just designed to distract the press from some of the other things that were going on last week.
Former leaders of the U.S. national security establishment have blasted Trump's decision to strip Brennan of a security clearance, calling it a clear attempt to stifle the free speech of the president's critics. The New York Times reports White House counsel Donald McGahn has been cooperating with the Mueller investigation. The Times reports McGahn sat down for 30 hours of voluntary interviews over the past 9 months as part of Mueller's investigation into President Trump's possible obstruction of justice. In an ongoing tweet storm, which began Sunday, Trump attacked the New York Times, tweeting, quote, "The failing New York Times wrote a story that made it seem like the White House counsel had turned on the president, when in fact it's just the opposite. And the two fake reporters knew this. This is why the fake news media has become the enemy of the people, so bad for America," unquote, Trump tweeted. This morning, he also tweeted, "Disgraced and discredited Bob Mueller and his whole group of angry Democrat thugs spent over 30 hours with the White House counsel, only with my approval for purposes of transparency," unquote. In Gaza, Israeli soldiers shot dead 2 Palestinians and wounded hundreds more on Friday during the Palestinians' nonviolent protests at the separation fence with Israel. The victims were 30-year-old Karim Abu Fatayr and 26-year-old Saadi Akram Abu Muammar. Gaza's health ministry says the Israeli military has killed 170 Palestinians and wounded 18,000 more since the Palestinians' nonviolent Great March of Return protests began on March 30th. Meanwhile, longtime Israeli peace activist Uri Avnery has died at the age of 94 in Tel Aviv. Born in Germany in 1923, his family fled the Nazis and moved to what was then Palestine. As a youth, he joined the Irgun Zionist paramilitary group, which he later quit to become a leading peace activist in Israel. In 1950, he founded the news magazine Ha'olam Hazeh. 15 years later, he was elected to the Knesset on a peace platform. In 1982, Uri Avnery made headlines when he crossed the lines during the siege of Beirut to meet Yasser Arafat, head of the then-banned Palestine Liberation Organization. This is Uri Avnery speaking on Democracy Now! About that meeting with Arafat.
During the Battle of Beirut, I crossed the lines into the Palestinian territory. I met with Yasser Arafat, who was the leader of the PLO, and we had a long conversation about how to make peace. When pictures of him and me appeared on Israeli television, talking to each other, sitting on the same sofa, I think to some extent, it helped to change the picture of Arafat the monster into Arafat the enemy with whom we can make peace.
Uri Avnery went on to found the Gush Shalom peace movement in 1993. He died this morning at the age of 94. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has announced a conditional 3-month ceasefire with the Taliban.
In order for our countrymen to spend the days of Eid al-Adha in a peaceful manner, once again we announce a ceasefire that will start tomorrow, Monday, until the day of Prophet Muhammad's birth anniversary, provided that the Taliban preserves and respects it and announces it for any period they agreed upon.
Reuters reports Taliban leaders have provisionally agreed to a 4-day truce. The proposed ceasefire comes amidst rising violence across Afghanistan. The United Nations says 1,600 civilians have been killed in fighting in the first 6 months of this year, the highest number in the past decade. In Brazil, the United Nations Human Rights Committee has ruled jailed former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva cannot be barred from running in the October presidential elections. Lula is currently the front-running candidate, but he's in jail, serving a 12-year sentence on a corruption conviction his party says was politically motivated. On its Friday ruling, the UN panel called upon Brazil to, quote, take all necessary measures to ensure that Lula can enjoy and exercise his political rights while in prison. To see our interview with Lula just before he went to jail, go to democracynow.org. In Nigeria, at least 186 people have died in a cholera outbreak, with at least 16,000 more affected by the waterborne disease. The United Nations says over 70 million Nigerians lack access to safe drinking water. Back in the United States, a speechwriter for President Trump was fired last Friday after revelations surfaced that he'd spoken at a conference alongside prominent white nationalists. In 2016, Darren Beattie was a panelist at the H.L. Mencken Club conference alongside Peter Brimelow, founder of the anti-immigrant website VDare.com. The Southern Poverty Law Center calls the conference a gathering of, quote, white nationalists and pseudo-academic and academic racists, unquote. And Kofi Annan has died at the age of 80 at a hospital in Bern, Switzerland, Saturday. Born in Ghana, Annan served as the UN Secretary General from 1997 to 2006, becoming the first and only black African to hold the position. In 2001, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. He vehemently opposed the 2003 U.S. invasion of Iraq, calling the action illegal. Kofi Annan has been criticized for his role as head of the United Nations peacekeeping operations from 93 to 97 during the Rwandan genocide and the Srebrenica massacre. This is Director General of the United Nations Office in Geneva, Michael Mueller.
We have lost the moral voice of the world today. It's bad for the world in so many other ways. He was a peacemaker. He was always in the forefront of trying to help people. It's devastating for me personally. He was a mentor. He was a role model. He was a friend, and part of my life, both professional and personal. And when I say that, I am also very aware of the fact that this is true for so many others of my colleagues and people around the world.
The former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan died at the age of 80 in a hospital in Switzerland. And here in New York City, David McReynolds, longtime pacifist and socialist whom historian Howard Zinn and many others have called a hero of the anti-war movement, has died at Friday at the age of 88. For nearly 4 decades, from 1960 to 1999, McReynolds was a staff member with the War Resisters League, where he focused on counter-recruitment and helped organize one of the first draft card burnings. He went on to play a key role in some of the major demonstrations against the Vietnam War. He also campaigned for nuclear disarmament. In 1980 and 2000, McReynolds ran for president as an openly gay man on the Socialist Party USA ticket. We'll have more on David McReynolds and his life and legacy with Jeremy Scahill later in the broadcast. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
The sentence rendered today is the longest received by a defendant for an unauthorized disclosure of national defense information to the media.
NSA whistleblower Reality Winner has been sentenced to more than 5 years in prison for leaking a top-secret document to The Intercept about Russian interference in the 2016 election. We'll speak to Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist James Risen of The Intercept, journalist Kevin Gosztola, and Reality's mother, Billy Winner Davis.
Say her name. I want everybody to know who Reality Winner is and what is happening to Reality Winner. It's very, very important that she be remembered and that people not forget what she is going through, the battle that she faces, that she is being silenced, that she is being hidden away, she is locked away.
Then we go to Connecticut, where a Bangladeshi woman facing deportation has been granted a last-minute stay following public outcry. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Yemen, Houthi rebels and local journalists say U.S.-backed Saudi-led coalition airstrikes targeted a camp for civilians displaced by the war Thursday, killing 31 people, including 22 children. The reported bombing struck the camp about 12 miles outside the Red Sea port city of Hodeidah, which came under assault by the Saudi-led coalition over the summer. State media for the United Arab Emirates disputes news of the attack, claiming a missile fired by Houthi rebels killed one child and injured dozens more. The latest deaths came exactly 2 weeks after a bomb produced by the U.S. weapons maker Lockheed Martin and sold by the United States to Saudi Arabia killed 51 people, 40 of them school children. This week, the Senate rejected an amendment by Connecticut Democrat Senator Chris Murphy that would have restricted U.S. financial aid and other support for the Saudi-led bombing campaign. Executives at the National Enquirer kept a safe holding documents detailing hush money payments and other damaging stories the tabloid killed as part of a cozy relationship with Donald Trump ahead of the 2016 presidential election. That's according to the Associated Press, which reports the executives emptied the safe after Donald Trump's election victory. It's not known whether the documents were preserved. The revelation came as it emerged that David Pecker, chairman and CEO of the Enquirer's parent company, American Media, Inc., was granted immunity by federal prosecutors as they build a case against Trump's personal lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen. David Pecker has been a close friend of Donald Trump for decades. His cooperation with federal prosecutors raises the prospect of new information about Trump's past behavior. Michael Cohen admitted in court Tuesday President Trump directed him to illegally pay out money to two women to keep them from speaking during the 2016 campaign about their alleged affairs with Donald Trump. The payments involved the National Enquirer, which acquired exclusive rights to the stories and refused to publish them in a process known as catch and kill. Meanwhile, the New York Times reports Manhattan's district attorney's office may bring criminal charges against the Trump Organization and two senior company officials over hush money payments. Any convictions on New York State charges would not be subject to a presidential pardon. This all comes as New York's Attorney General has opened a new criminal inquiry into whether Michael Cohen violated state tax laws. President Trump has renewed his attacks on Jeff Sessions, blasting the Attorney General by his first name in a tweet storm this morning after telling Fox News in an interview that aired Thursday he never would have hired Sessions if Trump had known Sessions would recuse himself from oversight over the Robert Mueller investigation.
Sessions recused himself, which he shouldn't have done, or he should have told me. Even my enemies say that Jeff Sessions should have told you that he was going to recuse himself, and then you wouldn't have put him in. He took the job, and then he said, I'm going to recuse myself. I said, what kind of a man is this?
After those remarks aired on Fox News, a pair of senior Republican senators signaled they're open to having President Trump fire Attorney General Sessions. South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who also serves on the judiciary, told reporters it was very likely Trump would nominate a new Attorney General after the midterm elections.
And I think there will come a time, sooner rather than later, where it will be time to have a new face and a fresh voice at the Department of Justice. Clearly, Attorney General Sessions doesn't have the competence of the president, and the president has a right to have an attorney general he feels comfortable with.
Senate Judiciary Committee Chair Charles Grassley went a step further Thursday, telling Bloomberg News he'd be able to make time for hearings for a new Attorney General this fall. Attorney General Sessions fired back Thursday, writing in a statement, "While I am Attorney General, the actions of the Department of Justice will not be improperly influenced by political considerations." In California, Republican Congressmember Duncan Hunter and his wife, Margaret Hunter, pleaded not guilty Thursday to federal charges they misused $250,000 of campaign funds for personal expenses, including expensive vacations and their children's school tuition. Speaking on Fox News, Congressmember Hunter appeared to blame his wife for the expenditures.
She was also the campaign manager, so whatever she did on that'll be looked at too, I'm sure. But I didn't do it. I didn't spend any money illegally.
Hunter was the second member of Congress to endorse candidate Donald Trump in 2016. His indictment on campaign finance violations came just weeks after the first Congress member to endorse Trump, Chris Collins of New York, suspended his campaign for re-election after he was indicted on charges of insider trading. Prisoners are striking around the country as part of a nationwide protest demanding improved living conditions, greater access to resources, and the end of what prisoners are calling modern-day slavery. In Tacoma, Washington, immigrant rights advocates say 60 immigrants detained at the Northwest Detention Center continued their hunger strike Thursday. California prisoner Heriberto Garcia is also hunger striking at New Folsom State Prison. He recorded video of himself refusing food in his cell that was then posted on Twitter. Meanwhile, in Halifax, Nova Scotia, protesting prisoners issued a statement in solidarity with the U.S. prison strike. The statement said the prisoners were, quote, warehoused as inmates, not treated as human beings. Organizers also report actions in North and South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida as the national prison strike moves into its fourth day. This comes as 10 prisoners have died behind bars in Mississippi this month. Activists and family members are demanding answers for the spike in prisoner deaths. The IWW's Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee tweeted about the deaths, quote, why #prison strike? Because at this point, it's about survival. NSA whistleblower reality winner was sentenced Thursday to 5 years and 3 months in prison, the longest sentence ever imposed in federal court for leaking government information to the media. 26-year-old reality winner is the first person to be sentenced under the Espionage Act since President Trump took office. Winner was arrested by FBI agents at her home in Augusta, Georgia, June 3, 2017, 2 days before The Intercept published an expose revealing Russian military intelligence conducted a cyber attack on at least one U.S. voting software company just days before the U.S. presidential election in November of 2016. After headlines, we'll speak with reality winner's mother, along with James Risen, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, and Kevin Gostola. All were in the courtroom yesterday. In Hawaii, there are reports of landslides and heavy flooding as Hurricane Lane grazes the archipelago as a Category 3 storm. More than 2 feet of rain has fallen in some parts of the Big Island as the storm tracks slowly towards smaller, more populous islands to the north. South African officials have rejected a tweet by President Trump alleging the wide-scale killing of white farmers by South Africa's black majority. Amidst mounting scandals related to the Russia probe Tuesday night, President Trump tweeted, I have asked Secretary of State Sec Pompeo to closely study the South Africa land and farm seizures and expropriations and the large-scale killing of farmers, unquote. Former KKK Grand Wizard David Duke and the far-right anti-immigrant website VDare.com retweeted the president, along with messages about, quote, white genocide. The South African government tweeted in response, South Africa totally rejects this narrow perception, which only seeks to divide our nation and reminds us of our colonial past, the South African government tweeted. Trump made his original tweet Tuesday night right after a Fox News report on South Africa. In Australia, Conservative Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull has been ousted after a bruising leadership fight within the ruling Liberal Party. Treasurer Scott Morrison will replace Turnbull as the country's newest Prime Minister. Morrison is a social conservative who, like Malcolm Turnbull, is known for his support for Australia's harsh anti-immigrant policies. He's also a prominent opponent of efforts to curb catastrophic climate change. In 2017, Morrison brought a lump of coal to the floor of the Australian Parliament, mocking opposition lawmakers with the words, "Don't be afraid, don't be scared, it won't hurt you, it's coal," unquote. Scott Morrison becomes prime minister as human-induced global warming has brought soaring temperatures and wildfires to Australia, along with the continent's worst drought in living memory. Back in the United States, climate justice groups are blasting the fossil fuel industry over an effort to secure billions of taxpayer dollars to protect coastal infrastructure from climate change. The plan would create a massive spine of seawalls to protect dozens of coastal refineries from encroaching seas and ever more powerful storms. Texas alone has requested $12 billion for the project. In response, Jamie Henn of 350.org tweeted, "Let me get this straight. Big Oil is asking taxpayers to pay for protecting their refineries from sea level rise that they caused by keeping us addicted to oil. Yeah, no," he tweeted. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos is considering a plan that would grant federal funds to states to purchase firearms for teachers and school employees. The New York Times reports the plan would use federal student support and academic enrichment grants to pay for guns as well as training for educators in their use. The plan would reverse long-standing federal policy prohibiting federal funds for arming educators. And Pope Francis heads to the Republic of Ireland this weekend, where 500,000 Catholic faithful are expected to line the streets of Dublin to catch a glimpse of the first visit by a pontiff to Ireland in 4 decades. Francis is scheduled to meet victims of clerical sexual and physical abuse. The Pope's visit comes less than 2 weeks after a grand jury in Pennsylvania reported more than 300 Catholic priests sexually abused 1,000 children and possibly thousands more over 7 decades, and that church leadership covered up the abuse. This is Irish journalist and broadcaster Pat Coyle.
That wound is deep in the psyche now of the Irish people, and it brings up that pain. People want the survivors to be able to meet the Pope. They want the Pope to be able to say something really meaningful, not just sorry. I think people have heard sorry an awful lot.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
Nosso programa fica por aqui. Você pode acompanhar a gente pela nossa página no Facebook ou pelo blog Terra em Transe.
Nos vemos na próxima semana. Até lá.
Economia é uma esquina de várias ciências, né? Na bolsa, se alguém comprou Petrobras, quer dizer que alguém vendeu Petrobras. Então quer dizer que essas duas pessoas têm opiniões radicalmente diferentes sobre a mesma coisa no mesmo momento do tempo. Então o mercado financeiro ele permite uma amplitude de opiniões muito grande. Então se você não tiver muitas ferramentas para lidar com essa complexidade, você não consegue. Então nesse sentido, um curso bom como é o curso de Economia da PUC São Paulo, que passa por diversas áreas do conhecimento, tanto na heterodoxia, quanto na ortodoxia, quanto em outras escolas mais sociológicas de pensamento econômico, permite sim que você desenvolva esse bom senso para fazer o trabalho direito no mercado de capitais. A vida social dentro da PUC, a vida acadêmica, a vida de movimento estudantil é muito rica, né? E acabou me capturando, né? Acabei entrando no movimento estudantil, virei presidente do centro acadêmico do Leão 13, né? Meu nome é André Perfeito, sou economista, chefe da Gradual Investimentos e fiz PUC São Paulo.